term.
Rebecca, how do you see it?
Well, I hate to disagree with Keith, but I do think that there's just been so much irrational exuberance into the AI tech space for this year. You know, when you have 29 cents of every dollar that is invested in the S&P SPY ETF that goes into the top 5 stocks, this is a concentration unlike anything we've ever seen. And while we've seen some rotation out into, you know, the smaller stocks and small cap, this needs to really rotate out, Maria. And so therefore, that does indicate a bubble to me. And certainly pre-election with the world going crazy and on fire, it doesn't make me confident.
Well, markets have been hot this year and last year, Keith. Let's look at interest rates. One of the reasons for this strength in stocks is this expectation that rates are going to come down. This morning, the 10-year yield this morning sits at 4.22%. That's down 6 basis points ahead of the first read of the second quarter GDP out this morning. It's coming out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. Economists are expecting the economy grew 2% in the last quarter. We'll also get the Federal Reserve's favored inflation measure out tomorrow. That's the June PCE index out tomorrow. I want to get your expectations, Keith. We do have new data from the Philadelphia Federal Reserve, finds that the share of past due U.S. credit card balances are the highest since 2012. So people have been buying, but they're putting it on their credit cards, Keith. That has been a worrisome sign.
Well, it's been a worry for me for a long time because I maintain that Chairman Powell set out to destroy this economy and slow it down, and the data is beginning to reflect that. So he's playing a very, very dangerous game. The economic data is going to reflect new urgency for a rate cut, for him to take action as opposed to simply punting.
I want to get your take on what we see next in terms of this broader macro story. Looking at the labor market, ZipRecruiter's quarterly survey finds that job seeker confidence in the second quarter fell to the lowest level in more than 2 years. Workers are souring over this labor market that seems to be cooling down. The Wall Street Journal writes this: the hottest job market in a generation is over, and many economists see a jobs market that has come back into balance, though some worry that the conditions could worsen. I spoke with Piper Sandler's managing director and senior economist Jake Ubina yesterday on this program. He says waning productivity and pricing power should accelerate the cycle of layoffs. Watch.
So a lot of sectors that look very overhired from a productivity standpoint. A lot of these fall into the stay-at-home bubble. You could already make a case that you need to right-size businesses because of that. Productivity well below 2019 levels. Now it's starting to happen, and the reason companies haven't been firing people more aggressively is because they've had pricing power. They've been able to push price because of massive amounts of fiscal stimulus. That's now starting to wane. We've got deflation risks that have picked up in a lot of pockets. You have over-inventoried areas of the economy. It's not just a normalization process. People oversave. Companies overfire. And so the tails of this are a little bit bigger than that. We're exiting this year with a 5% unemployment rate, probably going to 5.5% by the time we're in this stage next year.
So, Keith, what's your take here? Are we looking at a jobs market that will continue to weaken and perhaps spur the Fed on in September?
Well, again, I hope the Fed is finally going to wake up and realize the damage that it's done. I think they've caused the next several crises. I agree with Jake. I think he makes some very, very sharp points here. But, you know, there's another twist, too. I think that it's not necessarily a lack of confidence in the job market. It's the dawning realization from many people we talk to that the era of free money is over. They can't just walk in and claim to be an AI or a tech person and get a job. They can't just walk down the street and collect a paycheck. They're actually going to have to be productive. They're actually going to have to work. So this is a two-way street as far as I'm concerned. It's certainly reflected by the candidates we talk to in our office.
Do you want to put new money to work in stocks right now?
No question. For all the reasons that Rebecca and I disagree, and as smart as she is, again, I'm going to respectfully push back. I think this is the time to go shopping, and I've been doing that the last couple of days.
All right, Keith. Great to see you this morning. Thanks very much. Keith Fitzgerald joining us. Welcome back. Good Thursday morning, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and it is Thursday, July 25th. It is just before 7 a.m. on the East Coast. Time for the hot topic of the hour. President Biden addressing the nation last night for the first time since dropping out of the 2024 presidential race. He did so from the Oval Office. Watch.
When you elected me to this office, I promised to always level with you, to tell you the truth. And the truth, the sacred cause of this country, is larger than any one of us. You know, in recent weeks, it's become clear to me that I need to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation. You know, there is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. There's also a time and a place for new voices, and that time and place is now.
Well, we could talk about Biden telling the truth coming up, but he is passing the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris, who appears to be moving closer to the Democrat nomination, as the deadline for the Democrat candidates to declare their candidacies is just a few days away. The DNC voting yesterday to nominate the Democrat candidate virtually. But former President Obama reportedly does not believe that Kamala Harris can beat Donald Trump, according to the New York Post. A new national CNN poll taken after President Biden dropped out of the race shows former President Trump topping Kamala Harris by 3 points. And a YouGov poll finds nearly 70% of Americans doubt that Vice President Harris has what it takes to win the presidency. Todd, I think this is all based on the few times that we've seen Kamala Harris in public and at a podium.
Are you saying you've not been impressed?
The level of preparedness has underwhelmed. She's I mean, I know she likes Venn diagrams, and I know she likes electric school buses. I don't know much more about her.
You also know that she's
policy.
No longer burdened by what has burdened her in the burdening times.
In the past and future.
In the past and the future. But let's focus on a few things there in that lead up. I love that phrase, pass the torch, because to me it looks like the torch was ripped from the hands of Joe Biden.
Yeah,
I don't know if there was any passing. Two, do you notice in the same 10-second span, he said, I'm doing this for my party and I have to save democracy.
Right.
Like nothing about the nation doing this for the nation. It was all about saving the Democrats and this notion of democracy. Again, their only campaign point that they can make, whether it's Biden, Harris, or somebody else, is that Donald Trump is this threat to democracy, and you need to vote Democrat in order to avoid him. They have no policies that they can point to that's going to win them anything in the battleground states, because those independents in the battleground states are looking at the same things we've been talking about for 3 years. They're looking at their wallets saying, oh, we have much less buying power than we did before. And they're looking at what has happened at the border, and especially in those cities in those battleground states. They're looking at a situation now, because those cities themselves many times are sanctuary cities. The people in those cities that voted Democrat now have to share resources with millions upon millions of illegal immigrants. That's what this election should come down to. Republicans need to make sure that it does.
Yeah, and I love the fact that he begins the speech with, I've always told you I'm going to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I'm going to level
with
with
you.
Truth.
I mean, I'm going to level with you. I mean, Trump is an existential threat to democracy. That's ridiculous. I mean, no truth there. The border is secure. He's told us for 3.5 years. No truth there. The surveillance balloon that China sent, initially they said was not a surveillance balloon. He walked into inflation at 9.1%. All of these are lies or I mean, at best, misinterpretations.
No, I mean, he said last night that border crossings are lower than they were when his predecessor left office, which is just a demonstrably false thing that you can Google that. Anyone at home could simply Google that. He told us he was going to level with us and did everything but. I think most people like me were looking for some explanation, some acceptance that we're not all seeing crazy pills, right? We haven't all been blindfolded for 3 years, that what we saw in front of our own eyes was true. We have been subjugated to Democrats, including Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, and the like, leaving meetings with Joe Biden, telling us that he took his meetings on a pogo stick. He just left his Pilates class. He's playing Frisbee football in the yard. I mean, that's what they were telling us, and that wasn't true. I was looking for that. I think I would have actually been able to empathize with the man of Joe Biden if he could have came out and said, look, I am sick. I'm in poor health. It's time to pass the torch, as you said. He didn't do that. Instead, he doubled down and used it as a political speech inside the Oval Office.
Yeah, and then, I mean, there's the most glaring failure that Kamala Harris has had, and that is she was put in charge of the border. Okay, she didn't even go to the border where there are actually crossings happening. I believe she went to Texas once and was around where the border actually was. But this is not going to be rewritten. I mean, you can't just watch the media rewrite history with no, pushback on this. Democrats are heading to Chicago for the Democrat National Convention. That they could end up getting a taste of the border crisis. The Windy City expecting tens of thousands of migrants to arrive between now and the DNC, which is August 19th. Biden touting securing the border in his Oval Office address last night. Watch this.
Today, The violent crime rate is at a 50-year low. We're also securing our border. Border crossings are lower today than when the previous administration left office.
Kamala's comments on the border also coming back to haunt her. Watch this.
You're confident this border is secure?
We have a secure border.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
We are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
As a prosecutor, I can tell you it is a serious mistake to conflate criminal justice policy with immigration policy, as if they are the same thing. They are not.
What do you think the point is of that?
Maria, I don't understand. The reason the media keeps telling us what we can't believe our lying eyes, what's in front of our faces, is because it's working. It's the American people literally fall for it. I don't understand it myself. It's very frustrating to be in this business and understand that a lot of the American people really don't understand the facts because they just accept hook, line, and sinker, whatever is paid out to them. And for them to think that they can rewrite the fact that Kamala was put in charge of the border as the border czar, whatever that even means, and now all of a sudden they're going to all rewrite it, Axios retracting what they said in 2021. It's ridiculous.
Well, they're probably getting calls from the Biden campaign. They're calling Axios, they're calling everybody to say, she wasn't the border czar officially. She hadn't had a voice in economic policy. Where do you think that New York Times piece comes from today? Directly from the campaign, I'm sure of it.
No, the irony is, this is a full court press on memory holding anything that Kamala Harris was actually placed in charge on. If you go back to the White House website and you look at things she was placed in charge in, whether it was the border czar or the National Space Council, you are met with abject failure in some cases or stagnation in others. And they know they cannot run on her record as vice president because it's the Joe Biden record. And they know that they're going to have to go back to Kamala the cop. That's why they came out and rolled out this idea of Kamala the cop. It's so far back in history, people might have even forgot about it. And that's what they're going to go with.
By the way, she is the reason in some cases that you've got a soft on crime situation because it's the DAs that actually are allowing no consequences for crime. President Trump and the National Border Patrol Counsel, Brandon Judd, criticized Kamala's handling at the border at a rally last night in North Carolina. Watch.
Kamala's deadly destruction of America's borders is completely and totally disqualifying. She shouldn't even be allowed to run for president. What she's done, she's committing crimes.
I gave her all of the policies that she needed, all of them, and she refused to implement them. She does not care about you. She does not care about the safety of this country. He does. This is the man for the presidency.
Todd, your reaction?
What stands out to me more than Kamala Harris not visiting the border, save for that one sanitized trip, is that report in the Post that she hadn't met with or talked with Border Patrol chiefs over the course of her time there. How does the number one not talk to the number two for such a huge issue as this? It makes no sense.
All right, American Airlines earnings are out right now. Let's get back to Cheryl. She's got the numbers on. Well, welcome back. It's time now for the Word on Wall Street. Top investors watching your money. Joining me now is Kingsview Asset Management partner Mario Veneroso. Also with us this morning is Rebecca Walser. Mario, thank you for joining the conversation.
Great to be here,
Maria.
Good
to see you. Second quarter earnings are out, and we're in the middle of it. Airline earnings crossed earlier. Southwest Airlines reported a double beat. It said that it's ditching open seating and introducing assigned and premium seating in the cabins, making a significant shift away from the traditional any-seat business model. American Airlines, meanwhile, beat on earnings but missed on revenue. It cut its 2024 profit forecast as uneven demand trends and overcapacity in certain markets dampen its pricing power. The stocks this morning are down. Look at American, down 8 2/3% right now, and Southwest down 4.5%. Your reaction?
Yeah, they're flying out of this sky like a Chinese balloon over here. So with the airlines, it's the same story. It's been dead money for years. With both of these, the American consumer is a smarter consumer now, and more so if you look at the numbers with both companies. I mean, we don't even have growth. I would call it anemic at best. And between the two companies, look, Southwest has their problem. They're ditching their assigned seating, which is huge for that company.
Huge.
And people hate traveling. Look at this past week with CrowdStrike. And then you can look at American Airlines. You know, they have had tech outages. Both of these companies, I think, are going to be dead money. That's why there's an activist investor with Elliott trying to put pressure on Southwest. And I think between the both of them, I would steer clear of both of these as an investor.
What about the broader market? I mean, we had that huge sell-off yesterday. You want to step away here, or?
No, so that's a great point, Maria. We had such a rally coming into this, and there's a few factors going on right now within the overall market. Number one, if you go to seasonality, August, September, October, typically tougher months. And then there was a little thing called artificial intelligence. Yeah. I've had huge gains in my portfolio with many of these AI stocks. And we're starting to have a rotation within the market because of a little thing called the Federal Reserve and lowering rates. When I was on this show a couple weeks ago, Maria, I specifically stated we're going to cut in September. At that time, it was a 60% chance. Yeah. Now we're at 100.
Yeah, you're right.
So now we're starting to see a rotation within the market. Many investors like myself, portfolio managers, hedge fund managers, we want to get ahead of the curve, and that's why we're seeing this sell-off within the market.
Rebecca, look at this sell-off. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ tumbled yesterday. It was the worst day since 2022. It was really led by big tech, Tesla and Alphabet, and their sell-offs in their stocks dragged down tech stocks broadly. The Washington Post, though, is writing about valuation. They're writing this: a growing group of Wall Street analysts and technology investors beginning to sound the alarm that the immense money being poured into artificial intelligence by big tech companies, stock market investors, and venture capital firms could be leading to a financial bubble. Rebecca, you said earlier that we should be prepared for a bubble to burst. What does that mean, being prepared for that? How do you do that?
Well, you have to be in asset classes that actually won't burst in a tech bubble. So, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of reminiscence of the .com, not because the AI doesn't have a super long runway, Maria. It absolutely does. It's just how do they monetize it immediately? And especially when you see, you know, the cybersecurity threat of the Chinese balloons coming across America, kind of, you know, plotting out what's going to happen in the future, and we do nothing about it. Two other things that happened yesterday, Maria, that besides just the tech route of Tesla and Alphabet, is that we had purchasing PMI come into contraction territory, which was not expected. So now we're contracting again already. And then we're also seeing 15% of home sales contracts canceled last month. 56,000 contracts did not close. And you've seen now the worst confidence in home buying and a lot forever, actually, ever. So you've got the whole consumer really bracing for some kind of pullback, and I think that is telling in these numbers.
Yeah, and that is what we're watching play out in the market. But what's the worry about? Is it largely valuation, or is it worried about the macro story? Because, you know, the Fundstrat's head of research, Thomas Lee, has been predicting that this is going to be the summer of small caps. He's expecting, you know, small caps to be a beneficiary of the money coming out of large caps. Look at the Russell 2000 index up this morning, and it's been up for the last couple of weeks. I spoke with Piper Sandler's managing director and senior economist Jay Kubini yesterday, who made the point that the economy is slowing. We're going to see more layoffs. And he says buying into the small cap rally is one of the biggest dangers today. Watch this.
The market's obviously been carried along by 5 to 10 companies, right? There's been massive bifurcation. I think the biggest danger right now is buying into this small cap rally that we've seen over the course of the last few weeks, because a deteriorating economic environment is only going to be worse for that. If we're going into a hyper-competitive environment from a price standpoint, and again, the price wars are emerging and getting, I think, more significant, that's not going to be good for small companies.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason small cap rotation is happening is because there's a rate cut coming, and so the cost of capital is going to be a lot cheaper, and people don't have to be so bullish on tech, and they can maybe rotate out of the sector. But Maria, the danger is the consumer is out of money, and we are 70% driven by consumer spending, so that's what it is. And it's macro.
Yeah, and I want to make a point to that as well. So we saw the last 2 weeks, technically with small caps, they're breaking out of a cup and handle. They're up 10% in 2 weeks. A monumental move for small caps. But I I just want to put this in perspective for you guys and all the viewers listening. You could buy all the underwear in the world with Hanes brands. You could buy all the chocolate in the world with Hershey's. And what do you think the market cap of buying those two companies would be with a conglomerate like Microsoft? Less than 1%. So when you're starting to see this rotation of the big, large caps, you're seeing these monumental moves to small caps because by default, the way the market is with market capitalization, it favors the large caps and underfavors the small. So when we see that rotation, it's big moves to the upside.
What do you mean, big moves to the upside for what?
For small caps. When you're seeing a rotation out of large caps going into small caps because we're going to cut in September.
Yeah.
And if you look at small caps, if you look at their underlying economics, they have 4 times the debt ratio than large cap companies. So when we do lower rates, it's going to benefit them more. And that's what we're seeing now.
Well, that's a good point in terms of the debt. But certainly Tom Lee from Fundstrat is expecting a big double-digit move for the rest of the year in small caps. So we'll keep following that one. Thank you, Mario Veneroso and Rebecca. You're with us all morning. Good to see you, Mario. Thank you. Quick break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Good Thursday morning, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. I'm Maria Bartiromo. I hope you're having a good Thursday morning. It is Thursday, July 25th, just before 8 a.m. on the East Coast. Time for the hot topic of the hour. President Biden addressed the nation for the first time since dropping out of the 2024 race last night. He did so from the Oval Office.
You know, in recent weeks, it's become clear to me that I need to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation.
Yes, Biden passing the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris, who appears to be moving closer to the Democrat nomination, as the deadline for the Democrat candidates to declare their candidacies is just a few days away. The DNC voted yesterday to nominate the Democrat candidate virtually. Joe Burley, your reaction?
I'm actually interested to see a few weeks from now when Kamala Harris is forced to distance herself from the Biden record pretty strongly.
Yeah.
Because you saw a man last night who was convinced that his 3.5 years in the White House has been successful. There was no inflation. There was no economic downturn. There was no border crisis. There's no, migrants occupying hotels in our major cities. In his mind, he deserves the full praise of being one of the Earth's greatest world leaders. She's going to have to distance herself because when you look at poll after poll, it's inflation and the economy or immigration as the top 2 issues. She was placed in charge of one of those issues for the White House. And it's going to be a lot of pivoting, a lot of burdened by what has been for her to get away from what she's been doing for the last 3.5 years.
You're mocking something that she said, unburdened. That was one of her word salads, and she's always giving us a word salad. Early voting begins September 20th. So I wonder how successful this is going to be to actually have Kamala Harris as the Democrat nominee. President Obama has not endorsed her yet.
No, in fairness, he is one of the most perceptive politicians on the Democratic side of the aisle. There's president you can judge him for, but his political acumen and political skill are very, very, very critical. And to have him think that he might even hedge his bet and say that she might not win is really telling, and it should shake some Democrats to the core.
Yeah, early voting begins September 20th in 2 states. This is about to get real interesting. Rebecca, Biden also touting a strong economy under his administration. Watch this.
There is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. There's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time and place is now. Today we have the strongest economy in the world, creating nearly 16 million new jobs, a record. Wages are up. Inflation continues to come down. The racial wealth gap is the lowest it's been in 20 years. We're literally rebuilding our entire nation, urban, suburban, rural, and tribal communities.
Well, the economy is weakening, and the media is trying to separate Kamala Harris from the Biden economy. His vice president, Kamala Harris, has supported progressive economic policies for years. Watch this.
I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
So would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes. And I've, again, worked on that. We need to have Medicare for all. Who of us has not had that situation where you got to wait for approval and the doctor says, well, I don't know if your insurance company is going to cover this? Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
It's simply wrong that we have a situation where the pharmaceutical companies have been dictating prices. Affordable health care should not be a privilege. It should be a right.
But the New York Times claims that as vice president, Harris did not play much of a role in shaping President Biden's economic policy. They say Harris was rarely a loud voice during economic debates, including conversations about countering inflation. Also, the Times says that Harris sometimes attended economic briefings and was not always a big contributor. Of course, we know that Kamala Harris voted. She was the swing vote, the tie vote in at least two of the major spending plans out of the Biden administration. March 4th, 2021, Senate voted 50-50 on a motion to proceed with the debate on the American Rescue Plan of 2021. Harris broke the tie, voted yes. August 7th, 2022, the Senate voted 50-50 to pass the Inflation Reduction Act. Harris broke the tie, passed that bill. The Washington Post reporting Harris is trying to build on Biden's economic agenda, vowing to revive the president's quote-unquote care economy. Plans to expand the welfare state if she wins in November. Todd Pyro, your reaction. Oh, Rebecca, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say, it just is so clear to me that she does not understand economics at all, Maria, in those clips. You know, you cannot say Medicare for all and then have an open border as the czar. We can't afford to pay for Medicare for all for even just Americans. We don't have enough tax revenue for that. And then you talk about bringing and actually inviting people, hey, come to us. We give you a debit card. We put you up in a hotel. We get you on Medicaid, and then we automatically register you to vote when you're not even a citizen. So her economic agenda, if she's for Medicare for all and an open border at the same time, that's the end of the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, what do you think?
So it's Thursday. This all started on Sunday, but already the sanitization is as follows.
Yeah,
she's not in charge of any part, responsible for any part of his economic agenda. And Axios saying we can't call her the border czar because she had nothing to do with the border. What's coming next in the next couple days is a line that she is not actually vice president because she has no tie to the administration whatsoever. And we joke about this, but there was one line in the montage that you played that I think is the most important line to date. If she says, I want to eliminate fracking, she loses Pennsylvania. And if she loses Pennsylvania, Donald Trump automatically wins the presidency. Pay attention to that. She's going to have to work her way out of that because there's no way she wins Pennsylvania with a line like, I want to ban fracking.
And that is why the speculation has been that Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, could be her running mate. Kamala has until August 7th to name her running mate. CBS is reporting another member of the administration is being considered, and that is Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo. I mean, Gina Raimondo has been on the bench for a long time. She's highly regarded within the administration. I know that for sure, that her name constantly comes up. But I don't know. What do you think about that, Joe?
But what do they tout her as, right? I mean, think about what the Commerce Secretary does. Do they tout her as the person who implemented the successful Biden foreign policy, where we're not leading the world, we're being led by the world, or the economic policy where every American is feeling a lot worse in their wallet than they did under President Donald Trump? I think she's a fail. Someone like Shapiro would be better, but he would, of course, drive the wedge in their own party against anti-Semitism and things like that.
Well, and that's what John King.
Right,
he said, you lose Michigan because he's Jewish.
He says it's a risky bet because he's Jewish. Wow.
And
so in other words, anybody who supports Israel is a risky bet for the Democrats?
The saddest part is that he's right.
Wow. We're just getting started this hour. We've got a quick break. Roberts claims will be out in 1 minute's time. Rebecca, your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I think that to your point that you expected it, but there's so many people that are still so bullish on the runway for AI and technology, even in the second half of this year. Do you share that sentiment that it's going to be the second half of this year that we're going to see a turnaround, or do you think that the Bears are going to win this one?
So AI is complicated because I think in the medium term there's a lot of exciting stuff we haven't even seen, right? There haven't really been meaningful applications of the technology broadly across the economy. But everybody got so excited in the near term, and that has become very difficult to beat. You also don't have a very large number of companies to bet on when it comes to AI. There's only a handful of companies that are either in the cloud sector or otherwise where you say, this is my AI exposure. So as that broadens, but that's going to take years, not months.
Yeah.
We're waiting on jobless claims, the GDP, and also durable goods. Cheryl's going to give us those numbers momentarily. It's going to be out in a couple of seconds. What do you make of this rally in the Russell 2000 recently? Interesting to see big tech selling off, small caps doing well.
Yes. So actually, I think generally that should be encouraging, because you would think, okay, everybody's been worrying about the narrowness of the breadth in the market, and so starting to see some small caps rallying is exciting. I think the market cap of Russell 2000 is actually less than Apple. So I think, wow. There has been some valuation that needed to do a bit of a catch up. Whether or not it continues, there have been fakes there before, so we'll need to see if it can extend.
You're not sure about small cap sustainability?
Not yet.
Yeah. All right, let's get the breaking news right now. First read of second quarter GDP out. Cheryl with the numbers. Cheryl.
So it came in stronger than economists were thinking. 2.8% is the first read for the second quarter. The estimate was 2%. And remember, we only had a 1.4% read in Q1, so better than expected. Durable goods, though, the month-over-month number, negative 6.6%.
Wow, that's a big number.
That's a big number, because we were looking for a gain of 0.3%. Now, if you strip out transports, it's up 0.5%, which is a little bit better than expected. Core cap goods orders up 1%. Street was only looking for a gain of 0.2%, so that's better than expected. Claims about the same, guys. 235,000 on initial and 1.85 million on continuing, which is basically in line with what we're expecting, Maria.
All right, and 235,000 on jobless claims compared to the estimate, which was 237,000. Jan, your reaction to these numbers?
I mean, on the jobless claims, I think that, this is very close to consensus. Probably not really much to discuss. I think at these levels, there's no alarm to sound about the job market yet.
And durable goods down 6.6%. Seems like a big number. These are items, obviously, meant to last 6 months or more, and big ticket items.
Yeah, and also very volatile. So I think that these really get adjusted and up and down quite a lot.
The GDP at 2.8%, you have to believe we're going to see a revision there, right? Is that what you were going to say? Are we going to see a revision on second quarter GDP, Rebecca?
The most optimistic fairy tale numbers I've ever seen in my life. In this, I just don't understand. Come on, we are not growing at 2.8% annualized. That's not happening, and this is going to be revised downward. I mean, what is bringing it up so much, Cheryl? Why is it 2.8? What is bringing this number so high unexpectedly when durables are down 6.6? I'm sorry. No, I have to look at that.
We should point out that GDP prices were up 2.3%. So there's an inflation component to the GDP number ahead of what we're getting tomorrow, which, of course, is the PCE index. Where are you, Jan, on inflation?
I think inflation is, as I was saying before, it's still coming down, but much more slowly than it was before. I think what's probably encouraging from the Fed's perspective is the shelter inflation, which they've been hoping would start to slow down a little bit, has become a little bit lower. So 2.5% is better than 2.6 that we had before on the core, but it's still away from the 2% target, right? So if you're growing, let's say this number on GDP actually stands, that is going to be above the speed limit that the Fed's going to want to see if you want to get into rate cuts.
So September rate cut?
Well, this is I think it's going to put a little bit of a question mark over it.
Mm-hmm. And have you been modeling into your expectations the upcoming election? Any thoughts there on how things change?
So the election for us, because we rely on a lot of past data, and this election is so unusual by so many metrics that there's not really a way to model it. So much of it is basically trying to look for some similar examples, but we fall short on that.
The policies are completely different.
Yes.
So we'll see how that plays out. Jan, it's always a pleasure. 30 minutes away from the opening bell for Thursday. Take a look at markets. Complete turnaround after the economic data this morning. The Dow Industrial is now up 52 points. The Nasdaq up 25, and the S&P 500 higher by 3 points right now. Final thoughts for Thursday, Rebecca?
I think that the GDP is going to be revised downward, and I'm surprised to see the market really take that 2.8 number to this much of an extent to turn to the green, Maria. It's interesting.
And we'll be watching Kamala Harris certainly today, Todd.
Yeah, last night's speech from Joe Biden was a pass the torch speech. If ever anyone wants to pass the torch like that, I'm going to be looking not just for the torch leaving my hand, but the knife in my back.
That's good part, Joe Borelli.
In 24 hours, we heard that Joe Biden closed the border, but in case you don't believe that, Kamala had nothing to do with the border not being closed. Joe Biden had the best economy on earth, just ask him. But if that didn't work out, Kamala was nowhere near any of the economic decisions. The Biden-Harris campaign, 2024.
There's a whole new